Good morning, everyone. It is a beautiful day. Showing a little too much neck here. Button her up a little bit. Well, I don't know. Let's see. Maybe we'll leave it wide open. Um, Good morning to you, to 10 below 99. Thanks for saying hi. Thanks for tuning in. It is a beautiful morning here in Largo, Florida. Looks like the camera's a little humidityed up. We'll fix that. We cooled off a little bit. Rained yesterday. I'd say it's like in the mid 70s with a nice breeze. It is absolutely gorgeous here. So, I was on a really interesting podcast with Quantum Health TV, or the Quantum Biology Collective, with Meredith Oak. There's a link in the description, and will be in the comments eventually. I've reposted it, embedded the podcast on our blog, and wrote a summary of it for you. You can check it out. Really get into like HRV and my views on recovery and my views on why most people fail. And it kind of goes in with today's topic, which is unleashing your motivation. Good morning, Michelle. It was really great to meet you and your daughter. Or no, I didn't. That wasn't you. That was another Michelle. Sorry. I believe. But good morning to you, anyways. We actually met somebody this past weekend that watches the show all the time. So I get confused. Happens a lot. But that being said, this whole motivation, like I lack the motivation, it's a really interesting topic. And actually one of the most viewed shorts on my YouTube channel is one where it says how to increase your motivation. And basically my answer is, it's like literally 5 seconds, improve your health. And of course, this drove people absolutely nuts in the comments. I shared a link in the description, and you can basically see, these people going nuts about it, right? And there's something that people really don't understand. There's a big difference between training for health and training for performance, right? And when you're training for health, you all probably need really to challenge yourself, I'd say 20 to 30% of the time, right? But you want to make sure you're fit enough to handle that challenge so your body can actually adapt. We actually get into this in the podcast with Meredith. And in the past, we built the resilience to handle intensity through our everyday lives. I mean, I played outside for 8 to 10 hours a day when I was growing up. Winter, summer, it didn't matter. I was outside from the minute the sun came up to the minute the sun came down. And in northern Canada, the sun don't go down until very, very late. So we spent a lot of time outside riding bikes, playing. Guess what happens when I went to two-a-days for football or wrestling camp? It wasn't that big a deal because I was moving all the time. You got kids today, they don't do any low-level activity. People today sit in a desk all the time. They're sitting in an air-conditioned office. They don't have those low-level stressors to build the foundation that intensity allows the intensity to work and allows you to adapt to the intensity. And so what takes more motivation? Going to the gym and training, or going to bed early and turning your phone off, or pushing the plate away, or not eating those potato chips, or not eating that ice cream, or not drinking that alcohol, or putting boundaries up in your life where people that stress you out, that are causing you a massive amount of stress, you say, I'm sorry, but if you're going to behave this way, you're just not going to be part of my life. I love you, but if you continue to act this way, and I've had to do that with some family members, I've had to do that with some friends, and I'm sure I've had that done to me a few times, where I was causing more stress than I provided value. And I'm sure there are people in my past, because I was an asshat at times. I'm sure, that takes discipline. That takes being in a healthy place. That comes from being healthy, having the ability to self-regulate, to have self-control. When you're exhausted, you're tired, you're not in a good place, one, you're not going to have the self-control to do the things that are going to make you feel good so you can go to the gym and train. And a lot of this comes from just me observing people. Most of my clients were people that were doing spinning classes, running marathons, or they trained and they would come to me and they're like, I don't have any motivation. I don't know what to do. And somebody told me to come to you. Right. And you would look at their lifestyle, and their lifestyle was just a flaming dumpster fire of stress and crappy food. And it was no wonder they didn't have the motivation to train. And so they would go from trainer to trainer looking for a trainer who would be a cheerleader. And I'm not saying I wouldn't be encouraging or provide people with encouragement, but my gym environment was more of a teaching environment, right? And even in training, like I fell into this loop too. Like having great training partners is really important. I mean, I was very lucky. I've been on both sides of the extreme. I've had to work on my health side, and I've been on the like let's push performance even though we kill ourselves side, which is I trained some at Westside Barbell with guys like Jim Windler and Chuck Vogelpool. Trained with Donnie Thompson. I've trained with, you name it, like Mike Rogeria, some of the strongest guys in the world I've competed against, trained with. I used to go to Westside on a regular basis. I remember Jim Windler telling me a story when he moved up to Columbus and was training at Westside, and he was pushing really hard, and he tweaked his back, and he quit for the day, and Louis Simmons just chewed him out. Absolutely chewed him. But Jim was like, you know what? I know my limits. I know what I need to do. I'm not going to succumb to this pressure. And so there's advantages to being at a place like Westside where you get driven to places where you might not go on your own. But there's also disadvantages because you might overreach and hurt yourself. There's a lot of guys got hurt there trying to keep up with everyone else. And Jim understood that he needed to step back. He stepped back. I think he was able to squat 1,000 pounds a couple months later. And Louis actually pulled him aside later and said, hey, man, I know I gave you crap about this, but you actually made the right call. He's like, you were smart enough to stop, so there's a time and place for everything. And the trap I fell into, I would basically get and Chad Wesley Smith talks about this. Chad is an incredible powerlifter. He's coached Juggernaut training systems. He's coached, hundreds and hundreds of lifters, especially women. He's got extremely highly successful women that he's guided. And one of the things that Chad we had a good conversation about one time was like, you don't want to get so revved up in the gym that when you go to competition, you can't get revved up. He's like, I might have a cup of coffee before I train, but he's like, I'm not like, I used to get like really revved up in training. And you want to save that for when it's competition time. You don't want to be doing that all the time, because a lot of times I would get to the meet and I couldn't go that level because I'd already basically busted it in training. And that West Side, that's one of the things that if you get too carried away with the West Side conjugate method, where you're always max efforting, and you're chasing these max effort numbers, you have a massive amount of exertion. And yeah, you rotate the exercises to kind of beat burnout, and there's some truth to that. But I was so worried about getting as raw, physically strong as I could that I neglected a lot of the technical work when I was competing. And fortunately, one of my biggest regrets is that I didn't compete in raw powerlifting. Equipped powerlifting was like the rage, and there's a lot goes into lifting with equipment technique wise. You have to learn how to work with the equipment, and that's something I didn't spend enough time doing, and it really limited my success. So if I could go back and do it over again, even though it wasn't popular at the time, I would have competed raw, because I'm a much better raw lifter. And then a lot of the style, the West Side style, the really wide squat, is basically designed, one, to lift as much as possible, and two, to go as shallow as possible on the squat, because that's the way they called it. That just doesn't do well with my structure. I squat much better with a narrower stance, more of a quad dominant squatty squat than the wide Chuck Vogelpool squat, which there's nothing wrong with that. It's just not for me. And when you get caught up in these dogmas, whether it's carnivore, keto, veganism, you kind of get rushed. I was a young guy, very impressionable. You kind of rush along with the crowd, and then over time you're like, maybe this isn't the best thing for me. Like, what's the best thing for me, right? So you got to look at all the information and then pick and choose what you need. And I see most people in today's modern world that I deal with are really stressed out. They don't have good lifestyle habits. They have a horrible general level physical preparedness. Louis Simmons used to say all the time, this is one of the most hardcore guys ever. You got to get in shape to train. It was like, yeah, you got to get in shape to train. That's the way Louis would talk. But he was absolutely right. He would have people drag the sled. A lot of the MMA guys he worked with would do tons of sled dragging. They do medicine ball circuits. They do calisthenics. You got to have that base level of preparedness if you want to push and get a positive adaptation from performance. And most people, because they sit in a desk all day, do not have the reserves of the capacity to handle hard training. And they aren't willing to put the time in to invest in that. And it doesn't take much. If you're just trying to be healthy and look good and feel good, it's a matter of going for a walk 3 times a day for 10 minutes, and then a matter of doing some simple mini circuits. If you look on my YouTube channel, you search Jim Laird mini circuits, there'll be a couple examples of that. We have some of that in my strength training course on the fundamentals of wellness. Doing a mini circuit every day, once or twice a day, and then, lifting 2 or 3 days a week. That's pretty much the formula for what I've seen work for the most number of people over a long period of time. And most people, when they first start lifting, they don't spend enough time preparing the body to lift. They jump way too fast into the actual lifting. Really, when you first start, some circuits, some pushing and dragging sleds, some carries, some explosive medicine ball throws, working on different patterns. And that's going to make a change in the beginning. And then you load from there, and then you can change and adapt. But most people jump in like, they're going from like Tampa to like, they're starting in Tampa, or they want to go to Los Angeles. I don't know why you'd want to go to Los Angeles. Let's pick somewhere else a lot better. They're going to Glacier National Park, which is still a good place to go to. I love Glacier, one of my favorite places. And they're in Tampa, and they try to start in Wyoming. You can't do that. You got to start in Tampa. And so most people skip all the stuff they need to do in the beginning, which will make them better, but allow them to go to the next level. Most people skip a step, and then they don't have any ceiling, anywhere to go. So you've got to basically be cognitive of that. And the self-care part, people they get caught up in life, and they just basically overlook that. And then as they get more fatigued, as their sleep suffers, as their nutritional status goes down, it gets harder and harder to draw boundaries with relationships. It gets harder to draw boundaries with food. It gets harder to have the discipline to get in bed at night. You start losing discipline under fatigue. And that it just makes it harder. And there's guys that can, like Jocko can, no matter what situation he's in, he's trained himself to be disciplined. This is just what he does, regardless of how he feels. And I'm not saying every time you go to the gym, you have to train like a maniac or feel amazing. A lot of times I go to the gym, you can ask Dr. Stillman, we'll be like, yeah, we've had a really rough week. Either Dr. Stillman had an international flight or whatever. We're just going to kind of go through the motions today. We're just going to warm up. We're going to do some things. But a lot of times I felt really cruddy, and I go to the gym, I warm up, I feel good. I'm like, oh, okay, let's train. But a lot of times we'll just warm up, and then we'll actually feel better when we leave than when we came in. And that's great, because the next time we come in and train, we can push a little harder. But a lot of people don't even adhere to that. When I was younger, I admit that I fell into that. I would take stimulants, and that's a trap you don't want to fall into, because you're borrowing energy. To quote the great Lee Haney, you're essentially borrowing energy from the future, right? And you start taking the stimulants, and then you don't sleep real well. And then you take more stimulants, and you don't sleep real well. And it turns into this great cascade of just digging a hole, and one day you just crash and burn. So you definitely don't want to fall into the stimulant trap. Even though it feels great, I'm not saying don't ever use them. There's a time to use them, but you want to use them strategically from time to time, and you don't want to become reliant on them. You want to become reliant on sleep and nutrition and self-care. That's the base foundation for having the motivation to train and having the motivation to live the lifestyle that's going to help you actually recover from the training and will actually allow you to handle hard training. Anyone have any questions? Really appreciate you guys tuning in. See, we've got a few people watching this morning. There's a few things in the description. You can check out what Dr. Stillman and I learned about running 60 people through a thyroid course. It's pretty awesome, pretty crazy results. There's a whole video on that. And then we're also doing our thyroid course at the end of the month. Of course, you can use discount code JIM, all caps, for that, or Stillman, all caps, to get 10% off if you want to join us on that course. Can't even talk. We are going to be only taking 30 people through that course, and once you sign up for the course, there will be a medical offer. And of course, if you want to check out our Fundamentals of Wellness course, the course itself, if you go to stillmanwellness.com, in the upper right corner, it'll say, courses. And if you click on the courses, it'll take you to the Fundamentals of Wellness. If you enter the code 50 in all caps, you will get 50% off the Fundamentals of Wellness. Once you're in there, you can check it out. You can see what it's all about. Dr. Stillman and I go through all of the things that we've seen people lacking. The reason we created that course is I remember when I first started working with Dr. Stillman, he looked at me and he says, "How long have you been doing this for?" I said, about 25 years. He goes, it's amazing. I'm literally talking about the same things, regardless of what the client has disease-wise. I mean, obviously or issue-wise, obviously there's some nuances and maybe supplementation or troubleshooting, but for the most part, he was talking to people about these fundamental habits over and over and over again. And he's like, does it ever change? And I'm like, it's the same as a coach. Like, I'm watching a lot of the same things over and over again, and the client actually gets bored right away. We're talking about that right now. 10 below. What we're going to do is we're basically going to be giving you access to the Fundamentals of Wellness with coaching. I don't want to quote exactly how it's going to work, but you're going to have access to that. So you can basically log in when I do the Q&As on the Fundamentals of Wellness course with coaching. You'll be able to look at the course as I update it. And I'm building the course based on the questions I get and the needs that I have in the Fundamentals of Wellness course plus coaching, because I don't want to create, like, there's so many different routes this could go. I don't want to create a cookie cutter course that's just very vague and general. I want to create a course that's going to help the most amount of people. And then I'm going to do, when people ask me a question, I am going to do a video that answers it in the best detail possible for them. And then other people can watch it and learn from it. But that should be happening here really quickly. But if you are in an annual plan right now, 10 below, you can zip me an email or message me on Practice Better if you have a specific question, and I'd be more than happy to answer that for you. But yeah, you can get 50% off. I struggle with getting enough sleep at night. Thank you for stressing this. You're welcome. I'll tell you this. Most people struggle with sleep at night. One, because they don't get outside in the morning. Okay, you need to get outside around sunrise, get that bright light in your eyes. You are very welcome. 10 below. Most people struggle with sleep because they don't get outside in the morning. They don't get that light, and they don't get light throughout the day. They're inside, baking under fake lights all day, and their circadian rhythm is wrecked. They don't have a good nighttime routine. They're usually on the screens, so you need to put blue blockers on when the sun goes down. You need to get the overhead lights off. We either will put the microwave light on, like if we have to cook or something, we'll have lower lights that aren't above us. We'll put the micro, and I think we changed that bulb out to a different kind of bulb. You got to have a nighttime routine. I round over a stability ball before, if you look on my Instagram, you'll scroll down, you'll see me rounding over a stability ball and breathing. I do a meditation breathing drill. I get the phone off generally around 8:30, 9 o'clock. And that's kind of my routine. And then a lot of people don't eat enough protein. The lot of the chemicals, neurotransmitters that you need to have a good night's sleep come from protein, or made from protein. So a lot of people don't get enough protein, so they're not getting the resources they need to create those chemicals. A little bit of carbohydrates in the evening helps me relax, helps me chill out. But you got to have a good nighttime routine, and you got to get outside more. Most people's circadian rhythms are busted because they're just inside so much. and you'll find that. And don't train really hard late at night. If you have to train later in the evening, just make sure it's not as wound up. Try not to be training super hard like after 7 or 8 o'clock. I know some people's schedules, and then go for a walk, around as the sun's setting, nice and relaxed. That really helps. Binaural beats help me a lot too. Listening to binaural beats, listening to meditation apps. There's a lot of meditations on Audible, on YouTube. You can download it so you can put your phone in airplane mode and listen to that guided meditation before bed. Those are all things. A cool or a warm shower, not cool. The cool will wake you up, but a warm shower before bed so that body temperature drops. Having a little bit colder room at night. I know if you're married or have a significant other, that might be trouble. But a lot of it just comes down to having the discipline of having habits. And with Dr. Stillman and I, we share a place together. The internet usually goes off right at like 8:30. We have a timer. Boom, the internet's off. We're done. And when I get into trouble is when I start looking at history videos or whatever else, before bed, and I get engulfed in the phone. I know that I've gotten myself in trouble. If you have a bad night's sleep, try not to like over caffeinate the next day to make up for it, because that's going to make sleep even harder. You know, slow your roll the next day. If you can, you get a really bad night's sleep, don't start reaching for the stimulants, because that's going to interfere with sleep as well. A supplement that I've used personally for years and years and years, and I've had, great success with dozens and dozens and dozens of clients over the years, is a supplement called ZMA. It's zinc, magnesium, and B6. You can get it on Amazon. You can get it anywhere. Now Foods has one. True something. They're all decent, but that magnesium, B6, zinc combination. Some of them have L-theanine in it. That really helps you kind of chill out and relax. Dr. Kurt Parsley has a really good sleep supplement called Sleep Cocktail or Sleep Remedy or something along those lines. I use that from time to time when I'm traveling for years. It's a great, and a lot of times too, playing around with high dose melatonin. I know a lot of people don't like tell you not to take melatonin, but I found that when you're in a really bad rut, taking a big dose of melatonin every once in a while can help you kind of break out of that pattern and help you get into a better sleep pattern. I mean, you definitely don't want to be taking melatonin every night forever, but 1 or 2 nights, if you're really struggling to sleep, taking a big whack of melatonin just to kind of break the pattern that you're stuck in will help as well. That's highly individual. I've heard, James, do you advise taking naps during the day if you've had a bad night's sleep? I've heard both sides of the story. I've heard yes. I've also, I had to, I've had both sides of the story basically I've had both sides of the story. I've heard sleep experts say, don't take a nap because it'll mess your sleep up. I've heard sleep experts say, take a nap, it's good for you. From my own kind of experience, from my own experience, I've found that naps are helpful for me, but they can't be more than 15 minutes. And a lot of times I think the best thing to do is to do a meditation. There's actually a really great meditation that's only like 7 minutes long. It's by a guy named Roy Masters, who's a really interesting character, but he has a meditation called Be Still and Know, and it's on YouTube and it's free. That is one of my favorite meditations. It's basically, he walks you through this little meditation where you basically feel the tingling in your fingers, and you go and you view your fingers in your mind back and forth. It's really simple and it works. Thank you for clarifying that, Amy. Yes, it was great meeting you this past weekend and your daughter. So, but I found that if I do nap, it's no more than 15 minutes. And I found that a 15-minute nap will make me feel better, but it won't mess my sleep up that next night. So you kind of have to play around with it and see what works best for you. But I like doing meditations, mindful meditations, or breathing drills. The Aura Ring, I think you can do it in airplane mode still. You might not be able to. I can't remember. But the Aura Ring has a lot of great, well, I'm going to have to disagree with you. I'm going to have to disagree with you, Monique. I've been taking zinc, magnesium, and B6 forever. Dr. Stillman actually really likes ZMA as well. Maybe we can talk about that when Dr. Stillman's back on here, but I'm going to have to politely just disagree. I've had hundreds of people take that combination and not have any issues. So we'll take note of this, and Dr. Stillman can address that when he gets back. He's out for the day today, but thank you for bringing that up. It'll be an interesting discussion. I have no problem with people disagreeing, because that leads to learning, that leads to discussion, and doing it in a polite and respectful manner is always the key. There's no need to get personal about things. So thank you for sharing your perspective on that. But that's basically what I do when I'm struggling with my sleep. The phone is the big thing for me. When my sleep starts to go, it's because I'm distracting myself with YouTube shorts and YouTube videos, and that's just something I have to have the self-discipline to stop. And I have to realize that I'm medicating myself with the phone, and so that means I need to do some other things to medicate myself that are actually positive, as opposed to going for a walk outside, and medicating myself with things that are going to be a plus, not a minus. So that being said, thanks for tuning in, everyone. This was a fun one. Sometimes I love rolling solo because I can kind of just get on a roll and a rant. And but Dr. Stillman will be back tomorrow, I believe. Maybe. Yeah, I think so. I'm not sure. But if not, I'll go on another rant. Let's see. Amy says, my daughter's experience with training, she felt doing the circuit, she was more energized and felt more balanced, but wasn't lifting and working more. Thanks for the input. You are welcome. Are you talking about the circuits I gave her to do? Is that what you're talking about? What happens with somebody like, I got to meet Amy's daughter this past weekend, and she, if it's okay, I'll talk about her a little bit. She was very extended, basically arched. A lot of the lifting she was doing was driving her into this extended state. And what happens with people like that is they get stuck in one strategy. And so what I did is I basically took her to the other extreme. She was walking around, I call it the J-Lo position. She was walking around in J-Lo all the time. Her deadlifts, her squats, her benching were all reinforcing this J-Lo position. So what I needed to do was take her to the other extreme. So I gave her things to give her flexion, to get her all the way to, she's stuck in extension, get her into flexion so she can live somewhere in the middle. And we want to be able to load that canister, circumferential expansion, rib cage, and belly button together. That's going to be a much more efficient way to lift, deadlift, squat, push-ups, do all the things in the future, because she was basically arching. So she was using her spine to stabilize everything. She was having knee issues, hip issues. So I've given her some circuits to basically give her another option so she doesn't have to use that strategy. And basically, I'm going to teach her how to basically build back strength with that canister. That doesn't mean it's bad to like extend every once in a while to basically lift heavier things, but you don't want that to be your only option. So the whole point with her is to get her out of the strategy she's stuck in, and then give her exercises like front squats, safety bar squats, have her deadlift more like a hinge as opposed to a squat, making sure she's not jacking her head back. When she was basically, when she was squatting, she would get down on the bottom and then she'd arch really hard and throw her head back to get herself out of the bottom. She was basically creating momentum with her spine. Not a good long-term strategy. So a lot of times we have to do these little circuits to basically pull people out of the strategy that they're in. And then we have to give them exercises that put them in a strategy that's more efficient, that's basically going to have better results in the long run. When we run out of movement options, that's when we get into trouble. Just like blood pressure, if you can't switch from high blood pressure to low blood pressure, that's when you get in trouble. Same thing with lifting. If you're walking around in this extended state and that's the only way you can demonstrate strength, and you can't go in the opposite direction or move in different ways, you're going to get in trouble. And for somebody who's like a high level power lifter, that might be valid. But a high-level power lifter, their number one concern isn't health. Their number one concern is lifting as much as possible. But even high-level power lifters want to manage that strategy. If you look on my Instagram page, if you scroll down about halfway, you'll see a big dude named Chad Wesley Smith. And I've known Chad for years. And Chad was very, very extended. And his warm-up now, he started doing some jiu-jitsu and stuff. But his warm-up now is basically some things that I'll force him to pull him out of the strategy he's been constantly stuck in that was giving him back issues, giving him a different strategy so he can turn off that arch strategy so he doesn't end up with back problems. But it was great meeting your daughter, Amy, and I look forward to helping her out and getting her going in the right direction. She works really hard, so we want to make sure that she's actually getting results from working hard, because there's a lot of people out there that are working hard, but they're pushing the car in park. You know, they're standing there pushing as hard as they can. The car's in park. We need to put the car in neutral so it actually goes somewhere. You know, so we want to make sure that the hard work that we do, there's a payoff. So have yourself a wonderful day. Let's see this article here. I'll have to check that article out. Thanks for sharing it with me. Can I take zinc and magnesium together? I will check that out, but we will definitely look at that for a topic for one of the lives, Monique. And thank you, Diane, for sharing that article on Mind Body Green. Everyone have a great day. Thanks for tuning in. Make sure you get outside today.